We are now joined by a special guest this evening. Well, Mohandas Pai, the chairman of Aarin Capital and former CEO of Infosys, is now. Thanks very much, sir, for joining us. Now, interesting comments coming in from a tech CEO. I was just talking to our panel earlier on the kind of, work hours that Indian workforce is putting vis-a-vis some other countries like the United States, like the United Kingdom, Japan, and several other countries. But the question is, in light of the comments that have been made by the Deloitte CEO, does Deloitte really walk the talk? And do you really see companies walking the talk? Is this really implementable in a country like India, for instance?
Look, you must not look at work hours, but look at productivity. Okay? Please look at productivity. For example, Chinese productivity is possibly 2 to 3 times that of India. So when people are highly productive, what matters is the work that is done. If people are not productive on an average, or they are freshers, or they require training, they lack work experience, they have to put in the effort. So I think we just cannot take work done per hour, work done per week or something like that. We have to do it. Point number one. Point number two, working hard is an individual attribute. It means that individuals need to work hard to build their skills, to build up their knowledge base, so they become more and more valuable. They don't remain in the same place. And if you want to build up large quantum of skills in the shortest possible time, you have to work hard. Now, what Dell is saying is motherhood statements. Every CEO will only talk like that. Now, Dell will want to have very good communication. He wants to be seen as a very forward-looking guy and all the nice stuff. They will talk. But you must ask is the people in the floor, people in this company, and look at data from the company, what kind of hard work did you do? Because Michael Dell's companies, work on very low margins. And you can't make good profits on low margins, right? So I think, we can't go by bland statement made by CEOs for comforting.
So what essentially you're stating is that there is a difference between what our employees expected and, of course, what is being delivered to them in terms of wages. And, of course, you're saying that the company might not be walking the talk. But you raised the point about productivity being key. Companies have called back employees to office after COVID. So when you mentioned that point about productivity, are they actually interested in measuring productivity?
It's very difficult to measure work productivity in a service business. In a factory business, it's easier. In a service business, it's very difficult to measure work productivity, especially in software, because the gap between productivity of a highly skilled person and average person is very wide. All right. But there have to be some measures, and the measures have to be based on work. Let me give you an example. About 60% of the billing in software companies is called time and material. Time and material means you bill for so many hours per day. Okay. Now, if you don't have record to say that the person has actually worked for so many hours and you're billing for so many hours per day, you are raising an invoice for work that has not been performed. I don't think anybody will turn around and talk to you and tell you these details, right? So that is a challenge. So I think we should take this global statement made by global CEOs with a pinch of salt.
Okay, sir. But so when we talk about work-life balance, that's one side of the problem. But largely, this is also an economic issue. And I will once again on the show refer to India's CEAV Ananta Nageswaran's comments, wherein he stated that while companies' profits were at a 15-year high in March, but salaries really haven't moved at that pace. So when India Inc. leaders, for example, speak about working long hours or eulogizing about working long hours, the reality is that wages are not really moving in sync. In fact, they're not even able to keep up with the current inflation numbers.
I think we should not, let us not link it to hours and all that, because there is contention. But certainly, people at the bottom of the pyramid have not seen an increase in their salaries for the last many years like the CEOs are sent. You look at the IT company, look at the CEO salary 5 years ago, look at it now. You'll find it's gone up 50-60%. The top 5% salaries have gone up 50-60%. Board compensation has gone up in 20, 30, 40%. But people at the bottom 20%, salaries have gone up only 20-25%. Yes, on the relative basis, most companies are making more profits, but the percentage of wages to value added, I think, has come down because of automation, and they're not paying more. I think they should pay more. In fact, in the Quest study Quest study, which Ananda Nageshwaran quoted, that study is based upon a large number of companies who take people on contract. All right. For the job roles, they're taken on contract. And there the wages have hardly gone up 1-2% over 5 years because minimum wages have not gone up. So we must raise minimum wages in this country, in the service area. In the manufacturing area is a very different thing, but I think we should automate more in the manufacturing area, and we should pay for better skills, and we should raise it because cost of living has gone up. All kind of costs have gone up, and people are really in pain. And there is nothing to stop companies from doing that because they're also making money. You look at the auto companies have 60-70% of people on contract. When you have so many people on contract, they don't get paid well. The people who are not on contract get 2 to 3 times what is paid on contract because they've been there a long time. You go to airports and you see some of the staff at the counter, they're all on contract. You hire a contractor and he gets in people and you pay him. Their salary has not gone up in the last 4 to 5 years. So the great degree of exploitation, I would say, of many people in the bottom 50%, and I think India again has to really pay them better. And I'm really upsetting because CEO salaries have gone up. CEO salaries have gone up multiple fold. And the board members are hand in glove with the CEO to pay more and more. And CEOs should be paid more and more. See, I'm not against CEOs getting paid more and more because their pay should be linked to performance. You do very well, you make more profit, you should be paid. That's the natural thing. But you cannot do it at the cost of bottom 60%. Their average has to go up. It has to go up. It at least 7 to 8% a year to meet inflation and needs. And that has not been happening for some time. And that is a matter of great worry. So I agree with Ananda Nageshwaran. And that's what data says. It's not about 1 or 2 industrialists in their office to pay more because that example cannot be taken. We must look at the broad spectrum. For example, I read that article where one of the industrialists said that, no, in my office, I'm paying 8, 10%, 15%. It's not about them. So you can't take your experience. You've got to take the industry-wide experience. And secondly, this is what data says.
Absolutely, sir. And this is something that I was just discussing a short while back with a panel of experts on why there is a need to increase wages as well, at least the basic minimum wages, because this is a vicious cycle. If wages do not really increase, then consumption will lag, and of course, productivity will ultimately lag as well. But do you think, to the point that you raised about automation, do you think that's being used as an excuse by companies? Because there is also that fear of AI taking away jobs, plus there is more supply than demand.
Don't mix that so-called toxic work culture. It happened in E&Y because that manager was toxic. All right. Let's not take one example and blow it up to be the average. This doesn't exist. You know how many people are employed totally in India? They get wages every day, every month. 12.5 crore people, 125 million. How many deaths have happened like this? It's very, very rare. That E&Y example was very toxic because the manager was toxic. The manager used to make the juniors work, not let them go home, come whenever they want, do all kinds of stuff. The manager should be sacked. And the CEO of E&Y made a very wrong remark to say, oh, it is not my concern or something like that. He should have been more sensitive. And that blew up. Let's not take that as an example for everybody in industry. Please. We should not take one example and blow it up and say everybody in industry is there. Please. Let's not do that, okay? See, there are multiple issues. One, 60% of India's employees are not, barring the government, are not playing well. Now, in government, the work ethic is very poor, all right? There's no enforcement of discipline across state governments, maybe a little bit in union government, and there's a problem, and they get paid very well. So let's remove government employees. In government, the officers work very, very hard. They put in long hours, okay? They put in long hours, they work very hard, and some people really work very hard. In the private sector, for the bottom 60% of employees, they work very, very hard. And they're barring the public sector, in the private sector, they're not seeing an appreciable increase in their income. Within that group, the people who are on contract for repetitive tasks, shop assistants, for example, people who work in counters and desks, for example, electricians, janitors, housekeeping staff, they work very hard. They're not seeing much of an increase because the salary is linked to minimum wages. So India needs to raise its minimum wages across the board in the service sector. Because service sector are not linked directly to exports because there's enough margin, enough money to be made. And I think it's very important to do that. Next is, lot of automation happen in industry. Go to the auto industry, the automation happening. Automation will happen to improve productivity, and the need for people will come down because of the nature of the beast. And there's nothing you can do to stop that. But more jobs in services in auto industry are being created, in distribution, in servicing, etc. That is being created. That's a fact. But I think across the board in the service, and all employers have to look at it and do it because they're making profits. That is the data. And I think they're not being fair to the people.
Sir, I'd just like to add one point here to the point that you mentioned about that EY case wherein a 26-year-old died at a consulting company. There was yet another case with HDFC Bank Lucknow wherein the worker collapsed at a workplace, and then a LinkedIn user who went viral also claimed that Indians are actually being seen as donkeys to offload work to. And if you go on social media, you'll find a barrage of those stories really where people talk about toxic workplace practices. So now the final question is, before we let you go, how does one really resolve this issue? Because there are no magic bullets. What's the right balance? What's the right approach?
Look, the way out is for companies to re-examine their compensation policy, for boards to look at it and make sure it is fair and remunerate it to all employees. Because remember, all these companies' annual reports say, our employees are the greatest assets, right? They all make the statement, our employees are the greatest asset, we take care of them, they write all that thing. But are they really taking care of employees? Are they paying them well? No. The board should evaluate, the board should increase it and make sure the differential between the lowest person and the highest person does not keep increasing, does not reach absurd levels. They are reasonable. It is not to say the CEO and the top people should not get more. They should get more linked to performance. But bottom also, people should get more. Now, whether it's more is 10% more, 15% more, 20% more, is for the board to evaluate. But certainly, like Ananta Nageshwaran said, there is a case for the bottom 60% of people in the private sector to be paid much better. There is a case, and I think we must do it. As a society, must do it. Companies, as a part of good corporate governance, balancing stakeholder interest, to do it. And all of them say employees are the greatest asset and they are our main asset, all the kind of nice motherhood stuff, but they don't act on that. That's the problem. In the IT industry, they were paying 3,25,000 to a fresher. When I left Infosys in 2011, now they're paying 3,50,000 or 3,75,000 rupees. Now tell me, how is it justified after 13 years? You're paying maybe 15% more. How is it justified? What are the CEO paid in 2011? What the CEO paid now? Look at the data. I think fairness has to come in. We don't want our businesses to become mercenary organization, which many of them are becoming. And I find nothing wrong in pursuing profit. They must pursue profit. But I think fairness has to be there in whatever they do, because they claim to be fair employers. They say our staff are a greater asset. They say all these things. Please do it.
Absolutely, sir, and thank you very much for your spirited answers and passionate responses. And this is one of the key issues that we are addressing today. And we do hope that India Inc. is paying attention, and of course, those wages, those minimum wages, are adjusted according to inflation. On that note, thank you very much once again for taking the time out and speaking with ET Now.